And we're back. Happy Wednesday, everybody. What a wonderful week in the crypto space. Crypto continues to trend upwards. We continue to have an awesome bull market, and it seems like there is something new every day. We are so back, man. Adam, how are you feeling this morning?
Too much fucking winning. I don't even know what to do with myself, bro. The Tornado Cash win? That's impossible. I never thought that they'd get I mean, I know it's not completely over, but that they get that win so early, bro. I mean, that's huge, dude. We have not processed that yet as an industry, that you can basically launch immutable smart contracts that can live, and the developers of those contracts aren't going to go to jail for it. I mean, this is just, of course it's the right thing to do. We all knew it was the right thing to do, but certainly there's no guarantee in the court system that that's going to be the right thing to do. So that was massive, huge victory yesterday.
As some of the shit posters would like to say, crime is now legal on chain. Chris, what's your take on smart contracts finally being immutable again?
What's good? Good morning, man. I mean, if you look back even just a few weeks, we were discussing if Trump, not us personally, but the industry was discussing if Trump was even going to care about crypto at all, or if any of the incoming administration would follow through on any of their kind of promises or kind of goals of achieving something within the crypto sector. And look at us today. Like, I mean, the precedents that are being set by these cases, just how much freedom is going around is incredible. And so I'm with Adam. I'm not tired of winning, but we have a lot more winning to do.
Yeah, we still have four more years of winning at least. The benefit, of smart contracts being immutable, this is actually a big one, excuse me, for the interoperability space as well. Right. If you are moving assets between chains, we're still figuring out ways of what is the most immutable avenue for that. Right. On Bitcoin, people are talking about Opcat for being, this kind of trustless way to move assets across. Emblem obviously going into Emblem 2.0, we're decentralizing the key management layer, right? So all the vaults are now custodial, with still a few other degrees of decentralization to go. And we have RuneMine here, who is also figuring out ways to move Bitcoin assets over to Solana in a variety of ways. So I'm excited to have this conversation. How are we doing? RuneMine, welcome to the stage.
Doing well, everyone. Thanks for having us here. And pretty excited to and surprised to see how bullish the Trump admin has been for crypto. So hopefully it continues.
Let's go.
Yeah, it's funny that people were
doing everything runes with you guys today.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. we tried to get you on like a few months ago, and you guys were still kind of in the building stage or the upgrade stage of some of these new things that are happening. Let's start just straight up from the top. I would love to hear a little bit about your background and the ideation of RuneMine and how you got to kind of where you guys are today.
Yeah, awesome. So we basically the team has been working together in different capacities for a while, and we're Bitcoiners at heart, and we played around with some of the early ordinals and BRC20 stuff, and we were looking to build something on Bitcoin, and just kind of looking for unique ideas that were early and sort of fresh. And then Casey published his blog post in September 2023, and we started looking at things we could potentially build in the Runes ecosystem. And early on, Domo had posted this competition for someone to build a Runes canonical indexer, and it hadn't been done, like as far as I can remember, December and January, it still hadn't been done. So we set out to build one, and that was basically the impetus for the entire protocol. We're just like, we're just going to build this indexer and have it be infrastructure for any sort of wallets, applications, anyone who wants to track runes data, analytics platforms, whatever. And it just evolved. And so our business model, we never planned to have a token. We were just going to do infrastructure as a service. And then it evolved into just like building a ton of stuff for runes. So, leading up to the halving, we built just the basic ability to etch, to split runes, to build a basic screener. And that was like, I think when we first started building, there was maybe, I don't know, like 4 or 5 different runes projects, and now there's got to be hundreds, or maybe like 1,000 or a couple thousand. There's like 10 new ones every day. But we weren't really ready to go live with a lot of the stuff that we wanted before the halving. And if anyone remembers who was tracking runes leading up to the halving, there was like runestones, there was dog, and the hype was basically as high as it could get. And we just didn't feel ready. We wanted to have everything audited, so we didn't really do a big public launch in like at the halving itself, and we just kept building over the summer. And when we approached the idea of potentially doing a token sale as opposed to just selling sort of like a B2B SaaS product with the index or anything else we were doing from a services point of view, we started to look at launching a runes, and a lot of the people that were interested in investing us in RuneMine were like, well, I'm not going to buy a token if I just buy a rune, and then I can't really do anything with it. I can't. It's difficult to claim. It's difficult to distribute. And so we were looking at other chains where we could potentially just launch the token and do something interesting. And Solana obviously has been a big part of this cycle. Some of our advisors and some of our team actually, built stuff on Solana in the past. So we said, okay, let's just do something on Solana. It makes a lot of sense. There was also an emerging narrative at the time of Solana and Bitcoin, and sort of positioning Solana as a potential L2 to Bitcoin with Molecule and then Zeus as well, and some other projects now. And so we just built this bridge for ourselves, the ability to sort of etch a rune and then lock it in the bridge, and then mint an equivalent amount on Solana, or vice versa. Start with an SPL token and then have some sort of supply of runes already pre-etched, and to match them 1-to-1 using the bridge. And we, like, through the process of just growing the protocol, we connected with a lot of the projects, well, pretty much all the projects in sort of the BTCFi space, from infra to apps to chains to L2s, anyone we could just connect with. We were doing just as much networking and BD as possible, and they started to ask questions like, hey, especially a lot of the L2s were asking us, hey, like, this runes thing, if it picks up, we're trying to acquire as many devs, users, and liquidity as possible. Could you guys potentially build a bridge for us as well? So just happenstance, like, the bridge wasn't going to be a core part of the protocol at the outset, and then it just naturally started to get a lot of demand. And so then we started working with some of the early runes, Elsa, There's one that never ended up bridging called Epic. And then obviously Pups. And Pups was a really big success. Moving to Solana, they had a much smaller amount of liquidity on Solana, but a much higher volume. So so it kind of grew from there. And then now, I think we've bridged maybe 6 or 7 assets. And the goal of the bridge is just to basically be fully permissionless at some point, but we're sort of ruling it out in the semi-permission phase. So we can make sure it's safe and secure. We're really big on security. We know bridges, particularly with new tech and new chains, are a honeypot for attackers. So we've been audited twice by Halburn. We have a Sherlock audit ongoing, and we're basically spending all the bridge revenue that we make just to get more audits. So that's kind of where things stand now. We're super stoked to roll out some of the more and more chains. A lot of pretty much all the Bitcoin layer 2s. We're starting with the EVM compatible ones, Botanix, BitLayer, and Core, and then just integrating a lot more ecosystems. And it just continues to evolve. I think a lot of projects are starting to coalesce on the same issues in the Rune ecosystem, like allowing users to trade in sort of a traditional AMM swap-like experience. Kudos to what Saturn and Arch are doing. It's super awesome. Kudos to what Magic Eden did by enabling swaps. It's a big leap forward, and I think there's still a lot of work to be done to make the Runes sort of experience much more enjoyable for everyone that's degenning on Bitcoin. So we've got a lot more products that the scope of the project has expanded significantly, from Indexer to many products beyond that to the bridge, and now we have a lot bigger of a vision of all the stuff we want to build.
Yeah, you realize pretty quickly once you enter the interoperability space that the problems that exist between every chain are much more broad, and it's much larger than you initially anticipated. Our founder, Shannon, who originally started Emblem Vault back in 2016, so going on almost 9 years next year on this project, his initial vision was to just build a tradable wallet. And then that just opened up this Pandora's box of, oh, well, how do I get these wallets to each chain, right? What do I put in these wallets, right? What's the use case? What do people want to use it for? Generally what the developer has a vision for is oftentimes not what retail ends up using it for, right? We saw that even with ordinals, where the big breakout use case was BRC20 for a long time. So it is a very long and strenuous road, but it's exciting to have other builders in this space, because Emblem, we also believe that the interoperability space is like a multi-trillion-dollar industry over the longer time frame, just as it is in the real world, where you could say the domestic and international shipping industry in the world is close to $10 trillion, or 10% of the global GDP. We suspect that to be something similar in crypto, if not larger. Have you guys come to any sort of a thesis in terms of the larger vision, as you just stated before this, that the objectives have began to expand as you've dove deeper into this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like every time it's a good problem to have, where every time you sort of solve one thing, like it unlocks maybe like 5 more problems, or it feels like you're trying to cut the head off a hydra. But I think that's a good thing. It shows you that there's a lot of things that people want to do that they can't do, right? Because if you unlock some new use cases, well, then there's a million things that there's many new things that users could want to do that you could potentially raise many more issues that you could tackle. So I think in the case of from a high level vision, I think building on Bitcoin is probably the most sort of like safe as a builder perspective, because you just know that if you believe in the space, which I think we all do, you have to believe that Bitcoin is going to be around for hundreds if not thousands of years. And so you're building on the chain, you're adding what even sort of the degen stuff like runes and ordinals and BRC20 and all the unique digital assets on Bitcoin. It's furthering the growth of this entire ecosystem, and that's a great feeling to have as a builder. I believe in crypto generally, not just Bitcoin, but I think you could say that a lot of builders on sort of newer chains that might be trying to chase a narrative or chase sort of like a ball of liquidity. You can build stuff and then it kind of die out, and that's not a great feeling. So to build on Bitcoin is a great ecosystem. It's a great home to be in, and I think in terms of the opportunity, it's, I don't want to say it's uncapped, but it's essentially limitless. So the way we think about it is like, look, we're at the very early innings of digital assets on Bitcoin, and we're literally like a year and four months in to digital assets of some kind on Bitcoin, and Runes have taken the lead as the dominant fungible token standard, which is awesome. But there could be more, and we want to be ready for those as well, whether they're some evolution on Runes or something entirely unique and new. But if you look at like any, let's say Ethereum, Solana, and you look at the the market cap of the aggregate digital assets on those chains relative to the market cap of the asset that the base layer is denominated in, it's like ETH or Sol, it's kind of like 20 to 30%, and for Bitcoin it's like a fraction of a percent. So that gap is going to be closed, whether it's assets on some L2 or an aggregate number of Bitcoin L2s, so to speak, or on mainnet itself. I think that sort of remains to be seen, but we're positioned in a way where we can sort of be infrastructure and picks and shovels for whatever that's going to be, because we are, we are an intermediary to Bitcoin layer 2s to Solana, and Solana to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin to layer 2. So we're sort of trying to sit at the nexus of all of that. So we see that ARB is going to happen at some point, and whether it gets ARB'd up to the same ratio of like 20% of Bitcoin's market cap is now the market cap of digital assets on Bitcoin. I don't know if it's going to be that much, but even if it does like 100-fold increase, it's still tiny compared to what we see in terms of the same ratio of digital assets on other chains. So I think that's a big opportunity, and as everything sort of becomes Bitcoinized around the world, real estate, commodities, I think we'll see the market cap of Bitcoin just continue to slowly grow, and the demand for these digital assets on Bitcoin continue to increase. I think there has to be a solution for having a similar bridging like experience that you would experience across other chains to Bitcoin. And there's obviously there's a ton of projects and teams working on this from many different angles. And that's something we haven't really talked much about because we have so much going on just with what we're doing with launching the Runes back and forth with Solana and other chains. But sort of the version 2 of the mine bridge architecture is going to be completely different than what we have now. Right now it's multi-sig, standard multi-sig, where we're locking and minting from source to destination chain. But going forward, there'll be nodes, validators, similar to what a lot of the sort of layer 1.5s and layer 2s are doing in the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Interesting. So the journey goes something like this. You want to build a decentralized indexer, right? Because this is how you track the different types of digital assets that are on Bitcoin, because most of them are indexer based. Then you realized, the best option for this is to bridge it to Solana, right, or to another chain, because the trading experience is quite bad, at least at the initial stage. And then you realized, as the digital asset space on Bitcoin grows, we essentially should just take this bridge and build a superhighway for Runes specifically across all of these different ecosystems, because the expectation here is as Bitcoin grows, the market cap of Runes, which is currently 2 billion, could potentially be 200 billion by the end of this run, right? That's just like a simple 100x. And so now you're exploring how to basically expand this highway in a way to where it's seamless across these EVM based Bitcoin L2s to Solana and some of these other kind of preferable places of where Bitcoiners, I guess, hang out. And then with the 2.0, RuneMine 2.0, you're moving from the traditional multi-sig, which is the central kind of origination of how a bridge works, to expanding the decentralization scope by using some sort of TSS system. Do I have that right?
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. I think what the signing scheme is, we're exploring some of the more bleeding edge stuff, but you've roughly got the gist. I think for us, And I think the question for everyone that is building in the space is like, what, you know, if you're doing memes or any sort of token on Bitcoin, what's the value prop versus doing it on Solana or doing it on Ethereum? And there's obviously culture. So I mean, that's number one. There's provenance. You're never going to beat that with Bitcoin. And I think beyond that, everyone's sort of trying to find their way, because there's not liquidity, there's not UX. But I think we'll see, once we solve some of the UX challenges with faster, cheaper, secure bridges, we'll start to see users do things in interesting ways that we probably can't even anticipate yet. And again, we're sort of agnostic to what the future holds in terms of the actual use cases, but we know that building on Bitcoin and, like you said, enabling better interoperability solutions is sort of a winning bet if we can make it work.
What do you look at, or what's your current feeling, on, for example, bridging over a rune? And obviously then it's easy to trade on Solana, but it's still got this like tie to Bitcoin in that, the price is kind of whatever the price is on Bitcoin. So my gut says, well, it doesn't have this kind of like infinite potential to run like a meme coin launched on Solana does, right? So what's your current feeling on that? Like how, traders on Solana are going to look at these as far as like, well, can this really pump? Because, the rune's price is telling me this. What's the odds that it, does a 5 or 10x on Solana when, we have this like a price sitting there on Bitcoin, right? I mean, what's your gut tell you is going to happen here?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of hitting like the nail on the head of how people are using the bridge as it stands. And so, it's kind of a meme if you're building, let's say you're building an EVM space and your project is maybe it's plateaued or it's stagnant, or you're trying to grow as a builder, as a team. And one thing that people have historically done is just say, hey, we're going to go multi-chain. And as a user, as a community member, or an investor in any of these projects, it's pretty obvious. We've been in the space long enough to see, like, okay, are they going multi-chain because there's like the project are super bullish and the product is so in demand that if they move to another chain, it's great for users, because then users don't have to bridge assets back and forth. They just know there's going to be enough liquidity, there's going to be enough demand on that new chain for that use case to make sense. And then there's cases where there isn't that, like maybe the project itself isn't getting enough demand on whatever chain it's on, but the team will say, well, there's like there's a new maybe like the 50th L2 of the month coming out, so I'm gonna move some liquidity over there and hope that the new L2 sprinkles me with some rewards, maybe some VC money, and that way I can sort of acquire new users and breathe some life into my project. And I think what we've seen is not on this sort of like protocol front, but because we're bridging asset by asset, I think we've seen different runes in the same bucket. Like some of them, they're trying to kickstart their marketing in a certain way by moving to a new chain where they could potentially unlock a new user base, because they're not getting enough volume as much as they'd like. They're not giving enough pump as they'd like on Bitcoin. And then conversely, there's projects like Pups and some of the new ones we're about to launch that Dog BDC that we've worked with, that they themselves have so much attention, such big communities, that it's kind of just like adding more fuel on the fire. And so those are the partnerships that are obviously win-win, where you're offering a really good service to their community. They're unlocking a potentially new user base of Solana degens that wouldn't otherwise come to Bitcoin. But in terms of like how people are actually using the bridge, in terms of the price difference, I think that's actually a really good question, because another project in the ecosystem, runes.com, they have it's like a, I don't know if you call it a bridge, but it's basically like they're enabling, they're buying large amounts of the rune supply for different runes, and then they're moving it over to Solana and allowing people to just trade basically in like a token that they've named, which is just in an AMM on Solana, and doesn't really move back and forth. So it's not really able to maintain price parity. And that's an interesting experiment, right? Like, if from their point of view and the point of view of those communities, particularly like say BDC, $1 billion cat, it was very successful. And so they moved over, a lot of volume. The BDC was such a big community, had such a big brand, that when they moved over to Solana, even though people couldn't move back to Bitcoin, a lot of people aped on the Solana side. And I think that the size of the LP, which was about $1 million when they moved it, it's like 500K of the token, the new SPL token, and 500K of Solana of Sol. It doubled. So there's a lot of demand, but then they had a situation where like the price on Solana, I think, still is significantly higher. So we're potentially trying to work with them. We've had some conversations to try to get them to. I think they're working on enabling a two-way bridge, but it is quite tricky with all the UTXO dev work that you have to do. So we're potentially going to work with them to help them get their SPL token to move back to runes back and forth using our bridge. But yeah, there is, if we actually observe the chain and the transactions and how people are using it, there are a lot of arbs that are happening. So people are arbing, but you have to consider, given Bitcoin's block times and how long it takes to confirm and have the runes or the SPL show up on either side in your wallet, those arbs can take a while and the price can move. So the arbing only makes sense if there's sufficient liquidity on both sides, right? Because if the price moves like 10% against you on one side, then the arbitrager could potentially lose a lot of money. So it's a great question. I think we're trying to, obviously, we've seen with the runes that we've bridged, they have maintained price parity, which is nice. But long-winded way of saying, like, yeah, I think it's a concern, and it's a reason why we don't really advocate smaller projects to move over unless they're able to match the SPL token with a sufficient amount of Solana liquidity.
So you're telling me a bridge is coming to the rescue for another bridge? Some good brotherly love right there in the industry. Well, it's funny, 'cause the reason why I mapped out the progression of where I see you going is it's almost identical to what Emblem's done over the last 8 years as well. It's just you realize that the final path, or kind of the end state of this, is essentially just building the super highway for whatever asset class you're building towards across all of these different ecosystems. But then you also have to kind of uncover the culture of all of these native chains to figure out, do they even want, right, this kind of tokenized version on their chain, or what type of applications exist there, so that you can integrate your assets with from your protocol. So it's a much, much larger and expansive campaign than you realize. But you've now made it through. I have here pulled up on the website. It looks like you guys have supported a handful of. This is on the live stream, which is pinned up to the top. You guys have abridged a handful of different runes here, where you have like 4.3% of Cook the mempool, 68% of Short the World. You mentioned that you help pups, and it's some of these kind of like newer runes. Now as you've gone through this process, a dozen or so times, what type of experiences do you take away from bridging runes to Solana, and what type of outside of arbitrage, I guess, are there any type of community related requests or I guess you say issues that these different communities come to you and ask for you to help solve them with?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I think it's been interesting. We're definitely builders. I'd say we're a group of builders first, and sort of marketers and degens second. And so I think sometimes we don't put our foot out there aggressively enough, as we've seen with some of the way things work in crypto. You really have to push the ball forward in a good way, right? In a healthy way. But we approach all the runes teams, and I could say not teams but communities, because oftentimes there's not really a team behind it so much as there's a community and maybe someone who etched a large amount of the supply, and so our approach from sort of like an outreach and community BD point of view was like, hey, let's join the Discord. Let's talk about what we're doing. Let's educate. Let's try to get them on our side and say, hey, this is why you might consider moving to Solana. Share some case studies like Pups, for example. I think at their peak, they had like less than 20% of the circulating supply on Solana as they did on Bitcoin, but they had like 10 to 12x the volume. So looking at like 50 to 60x the amount of trading volume per unit of liquidity, which isn't really surprising since, I mean, Solana versus, you know, the experience on Bitcoin. But I think that was a testament of like how effective it can be. And so we would share some of these case studies, but, you know, if you're a big runes community and everything's going well, you're like, first of all, the runes community can be, let's just say, very competitive with each other. And so, you know, it's, you know, you want to maintain the brand, and this weird Solana thing can be seen as sort of like a negative is on the brand. And so it was difficult to convince some of the earlier communities, but I think, you know, given where the product's at, and we've sort of proven ourselves, that's why we've seen some more and more runes sort of come around and say, hey, like, we want to try this out too, because again, they're feeling the friction of a lot of first time. They're doing great marketing, they're doing great community building, but a lot of their community might be first time Bitcoiners. They don't know how to use Bitcoin wallets. They don't know the difference between different Bitcoin addresses. And so they see this as like a sort of a simpler way to unlock the community to a much larger and sort of more user-friendly experience. I think that's been interesting. I think, you know, from our point of view, like just managing the transactions, like there's a lot of educating that has to happen to community to get them to understand how Bitcoin works and why they might have to wait and all that. So that's kind of been a really big point of leverage for us to continue to build and expand how we're going to evolve the bridge. And I think the way it's going to work, again, I think a lot of L2s and a lot of sort of bridges are attacking this from a similar angle, is either you have some sort of solvers like network, the type of which you have with Wormhole, or you have with, say, dBridge, where, you know, there's a set of independent nodes and validators that are tasked with observing events on one blockchain, like a token lock or a contract execution, and relaying those events to another blockchain, and then ensuring those actions are valid and securely executed across chains. So, but then, you know, the solver network on the destination chain is basically putting up the capital. It gets a message from the source chain or whatever messaging network, and it puts up the capital to very quickly fulfill that transaction. But if you're saying that has to be fulfilled quickly to give the user a quick, seamless experience as they'd experience on other chains, well, it won't be on mainnet, but it would have to be in a very trusted, say, like Bitcoin secured POS chain or something like that, like Babylon or something like that. So that's possible. The other, that's probably where it's headed, I would say. And so, like, dealing with lots and lots of community issues, we see this firsthand of why I think it's really valuable to sort of move towards something like that. Yeah, sorry, I don't know if I lost track of the question.
Dude, you're all good, man. When you're diving into the interoperability space, there's so many, you know, little niches and avenues to this. It's, you know, it's really, really a tough space that's actually quite early. Like the way that I look at it is that, you know, I see kind of blockchains as countries, and right, and like bridges and interoperability protocols are the ways to like move these assets, and basically importing and exporting assets in and out of these different countries, right? So like Bitcoin is a big export of assets, where most of the NFTs and runes, right? You guys are taking the runes kind of angle of this. Emblem has been taking the NFT side of this for over 4 years now and exporting it to different chains, right? And you do that because of the limited programmability that exists. Doesn't mean that there won't ever be programmability. It just means in this kind of current climate. Whereas something like Ethereum has been more of a mass import chain, right? That's why it has so many different synthetics. And now Solana is really, you know, starting to eat away at that lead that Ethereum's had over time. You know, who to say, you know, what happens over the next 5 years, right? As some other of these chains come online. But one thing's for certain is that things will always be moved in between chains unless you have this belief that, you know, basically crypto is going to be a bunch of independent internets kind of running, you know, parallel with each other instead of actually interacting with each other. So we're kind of on this side of everything is going to interact, where there are some people who believe that everything will be kind of independent there.
And then there's like 5 guys who think it's only going to be on Bitcoin.
Right. The maxis, the hyper Bitcoinization. But, you know, as you kind of look at that angle, and we are still early to, you know, this interoperability space, like right now, right? You had last cycle was, you know, DeFi and NFTs. This cycle, it's like NFTs, or it's like ordinals and meme coins. So it's becoming a little bit more kind of granular and specialized. And then maybe in a cycle or two, it's actually the kind of, you know, bridging and cross-chain DeFi and interoperability and et cetera. You know, how does Rune Labs manage to, you know, survive over the next, you know, 4 to 5 years before everyone's like, oh, no shit, interoperability is like one of the biggest industries, like it, but that's not clearly obvious for many people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's, you know, as a founder, that's your question, right? How do you make sure you survive? You know, let's just say 3 cycles being the you've won in crypto, because 99.9% don't make it that far. I think you have to build products that people genuinely want to use, and they're genuinely sufficiently differentiated from your competitors that they, you know, you have enough of a leg up in sort of the Red Queen hyper competitive race that is building in crypto, that you can sustain a sufficient amount of cash flow to cover your burn plus enough to invest in R&D to build products that keep you ahead in that race. I think that's the way you have to do it, whatever you're building. And for us, that, you know, again, there's like we have multiple products that are cash flowing, the bridge being the main one, and that's great. It's a great position to be in. But again, you know, that's not going to last forever, right? Because their competition will come in, and so we have to continuously refine that core product, but invest in new products. And right now, the cash flow just from the bridge and the sort of like limited rollout is pretty good. It's, you know, bridges are, if done well, are, you know, known in crypto for being extremely profitable, and I think that's why it's such an interesting, or such, I guess you could say, high revenue generating, not necessarily profitable, but I would guess profitable as well. But that's why, you know, building in Bitcoin Bitcoin bridges, you know, represent one of the more interesting, but also, you know, exciting challenges to tackle in the entire industry, right? But, you know, I think what you're saying is interesting. The country analogy is fun, because it almost feels to me like there's always, I'm not sure if this is the case, but it feels like there's always going to be a new faster chain of some kind. And maybe that's like a sort of a logical fallacy, but there's, you know, there was Ethereum, and then there's other promising chains, Doge, Solana, AVAX, Cardano, obviously, but now there's Monad and Mega ETH, and Phantom is going through these big upgrades. So they're all kind of like competing on the same vectors, but all that competition is great for anyone who's doing something in the interoperability space, because you're basically just it's adding more demand for whatever product you're building, is if you are sitting in between those different sort of competitive races. But for us, you know, again, we have to sustain the products we have now that are cash flowing, and then continuously build new stuff, and make sure that the new stuff we're thinking as far ahead as we can, while still having it be reasonable, so that there is product market fit when we launch it. So that's the fun part about crypto, right? Like, you have to operate as far at the edge of the Overton window as you could possibly be comfortable with, and even then maybe a little bit more uncomfortable, because by the time the window is there, window starts to close, other people will see it and build rapidly, and they might be better funded than you. So I think for us, we have this bridge evolution, and that's more of a B2B, I guess, if you borrow, you know, words from traditional startup, the startup world, like, it's more of a B2B or B2B2C sort of product. But we have the you know, the bridge itself is also, it's a B2C product, and the sort of like etching and minting is a B2C product. And then we have, I guess I can share some alpha here with you guys. There's many projects tackling trading on runes, trading with runes from interesting angles. And I think what Saturn and Arch have just announced is probably one of the more interesting ones in the space. We're going to be doing something that I guess you could say is similar, but a little bit different in terms of the architecture. We're going to be using what's called Near. It's from Near Protocol. They're chain signatures, which allow for smart contract-like interactions on Bitcoin. And similar to how Arch uses sort of, I think it's a clone of the Solana virtual machine to sort of manage account balances in their VM and then settle on Bitcoin. We're going to be using Near's chain signatures to do something similar. And so we're working on that product. It's going to be called RuneShot. It's both a launch platform, different than just etching and minting, and a trading terminal as well. That, again, will give users sort of like a very, I guess if you're accustomed to playing around in DeFi, sort of a more DeFi-like AMM-like experience, but with runes.
Wow, very interesting. Also a big fan of Near. They've gone really all in on Bitcoin support from a variety of angles, right? Because their chain signatures technology allows for this different type of interoperability. And also they've really gone heavy into the AI stuff. So they've really started to separate themselves. I have one final kind of comment here, and then I'll pass it over to Chris, who's also on stream. If you're long-term bullish on fragmentation in the crypto industry, you're probably building an interoperability protocol, right? If you think that the industry is not going to be fragmented moving forward, right, then you probably want to build an application. But Chris, you're our resident Solana bull for many, many years. What's your thought on, bridging to Solana, and are there any questions that you have?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's the right direction, and we're doing something similar as well. We're excited to get over to Solana and move these Bitcoin assets over to Solana. They're kind of so they coincide so well with each other. One thing when I was going through your product that was super interesting was I think it was volume by unit bridged, if that's right. And what kind of what were you able to take away from the volume by unit bridge to your protocol? What were you seeing on the front end or on the back end? Were users preferring to trade on Solana? Was it competitive within the Bitcoin space, or what was the advantages that you could take away from the unit per volume bridged?
Yeah, I think it's just a testament to the discrepancy. It's hard to make it wouldn't be
parallel, of course.
Yeah, I mean, you can't basically say like, because of this statistic that we can ascertain with confidence that there's X amount of more demand. You'd have to run some controls there to make that claim. But I think generally speaking, given like the large discrepancy, I think you can say, hey, look, like the main takeaway is there are serious UX issues with trading runes and swapping runes and buying and selling runes. I mean, come on, if everyone's tried to buy and sell runes in any amount of size, like it's a pain in the ass. It's terrible. So I think it's not hard to say like we could have chosen any other ecosystem like Base or something besides Solana and just said, hey, we're going to mint a token on Base, and then like Solana just happens to be the chain of the cycle, has the most culture, has a great user experience. The DevX I think has ways to catch up to Ethereum, but compare that to Bitcoin. But I think that's the main takeaway is like, look, this just shows how much work there is to be done on the Bitcoin side. It doesn't necessarily mean that like Solana is so good. It is great. It's a great experience for everyone who's gone from sort of like finally made the switch from Ethereum to Solana. It's a great experience all around, but I think it's a testament to the fact that the trading UX on Bitcoin is so poor.
For sure. And it is kind of mostly like a trading product at the moment. As kind of these chains expand and as the entire kind of crypto like use cases kind of explode, do you think your protocol will kind of always be within that kind of trading realm or trading accessible kind of protocol, or do you foresee kind of other use cases down the road, or what are your thoughts on kind of further on your roadmap and what that might look like?
Yeah, I think yes. Like, let's say, but it comes back down to the question that we sort of touched on before, which is what are we trying to accomplish with Bitcoin? And again, we can't say that we're going to know for sure. And the reason that's important is because when you talk about trading, that the innovation that's happening on the EVM side of things is pretty crazy. Like some of the stuff UniV4 is doing. You look at the potential upgrades that Andre Kranya is doing with the new and improved Solidity type dexes like Aerodrome and stuff like that he's planning to build on Phantom. There's a lot of stuff that can be done with it. But if you're gonna be talking about like, okay, we're gonna focus on trading, well, you're offering a product to traders. Do traders of runes necessarily care about like like gamma, delta, different types of options plays on chain, all sorts of like complex LP strategies? I think you're opening up sort of a Pandora's box, but not in a good way, in a sense, or not in a way that's going to be, you're going to find a lot of users relative to the options that are already going to be available on EVM chains. So I think it's going to be more about, this is just my take, I think it's going to be more about trust, provenance, security. That's where Bitcoin's really going to win. And providing trading like experiences on runes, it's so necessary that, and it's so necessary for whatever potential fungible token standard comes after runes, that it has to be built. And for us, leading into that, I think it's enough of a challenge that we're going to have our hands full for several years, building it and refining it and optimizing it and coming up with new stuff. But in terms of like a long-term trading product, I see it again. What does that look like? Well, we need to get the basics of being able to buy and sell done. But once that's done, how much further down the rabbit hole of enabling a product that traders love to use is necessary on Bitcoin? Probably not that much. So getting from the 0 to 1 improvement for us is just like is the most important thing, and then like the last 5 to 95 to 99% maybe isn't going to be as necessary. So, but again, I think like we were saying earlier, once we sort of solve some of these bigger challenges that are just left unsolved, there's gonna be a lot more stuff that people are doing and uncovering that we can then go after.
Solid. And maybe you do a lot of obviously work on Bitcoin itself. What do you foresee as far as improvements within that trading experience, and how are you kind of like preparing for maybe a little bit improved Bitcoin experience to kind of maybe change the path of maybe where you guys are building towards for the ease of accessibility?
Yeah, so this basically our approach to improving the trading experience is basically, again, it's leaning into nearest chain signatures. So we have we basically have this launch platform called RuneShot, and it enables basically a rune mine. Oops. There we go. Okay, yeah, it enables basically a trading terminal. So the trading terminal basically allow users to deposit and trade BTC, SPL, near stable coins, runes. This will essentially be low cost. This sort of cost of transaction you'd expect on near and fast. And we have a plan to try to meet traders where they are. So one interesting thing about near is that using chain signatures, you don't really necessarily need to know that near is powering the tech. You can just use whatever wallet you're accustomed to, wherever the liquidity is. And we've explored some different ways to tap into different user bases, iOS, Telegram apps, etc. Which I think actually Saturn, I saw they launched something with Bonk called the Saturn bot, which allows similar. It's like basically trading Bonk directly from within Telegram, which is kind of interesting. Again, tackling that from a different angle, but yeah, it's going to be rune-centric trading powered by Near, meaning you're just going to deposit runes or funds to buy runes, and then over time support other stable coins from different chains, including Near tokens. And we feel that's going to be giving enough flexibility to users that will be a good first version of the trading terminal product that's enabled by ChainSigs.
Interesting. Yeah. Near is somebody that Emblem was working with before I joined the team about kind of some of the similar interoperability. What caused you to choose them over maybe some of these other, TSS or TE systems? Did you explore all of them, or was there just something that was just so inherently valuable with what Near was offering that you decided to build with them?
Actually, they reached out to us, and we had been, we're all trying to move towards a better Bitcoin experience. So we have great relationships with everyone, in the industry, in our sort of Bitcoin economy industry. But they reached out to us, and I think they have been trying to really integrate chain signatures with a lot of the protocols that have some sort of interop or cross chain focus. And so they said, hey, their proposal to us was actually quite interesting. So the conversation started with potentially using chain signatures to solve the issue of distribution of runes. So like you can't, as it stands, you can't really distribute runes on L1 in sort of like a way that users are used to. So I think it's Runes Terminal. They with their and correct me if I'm wrong, but their launch platform, they rebranded to BTC Terminal, but they basically, for their launch pad, they can collect funds in different. They can collect funds in BTC.
Yeah, they can do they could do EVM stuff too.
EVM, but in terms of distribution, like I think with Runes, it's obviously a bit clunky, right? And so like when we think about like how to do rune shot using chain signatures, the idea is basically something that could use either a bonding curve and open mint model to sell and distribute runes. And so we want to basically simplify the minting process and the distribution process, which brings down costs, increases speed, and has those tokens still natively on L1. And so we were kind of trying to tackle this ourselves, again, coming from the perspective of, we originally wanted to have a token sale where we had a rune token for our token, and we just quickly realized it wasn't going to work. And so we were pretty far along into the bridge concept, already integrating like a lot of the L2s. Obviously Solana was already live, and then Near reached out to us and they said, hey, we want that nobody's building something that's like, for lack of a better comparison, like a pump.fun, but for runes. And given how bullish the rune space gets, we think it'd be really fun if someone was able to enable sort of like the PDF style bonding curve and mint dynamics, but using runes. And so that was sort of the first step. They reached out and they asked if we wanted to build it, and we said, yeah, like we would love to. And they said, okay, we would like to invest, we'd like to support. And then it evolved into the sort of like, okay, if we do this, then we can also do this with the trading terminal as well. So they sort of brought it up, but then we met them at DevCon a couple weeks ago, their whole team at their Redacted event, and had just really vibed and decided to move forward with the product.
It's interesting to watch the evolution of the bridging industry, quote unquote, because I've noticed over the last maybe 6 months really, that every interoperability protocol is now leveraging some sort of signature scheme to power their protocol essentially. And some of the examples is RuneMine and Near, right? And then you have ICP and the TAP protocol are working together. Emblem, we just moved to something called the Lit protocol, which allows us to move cross chain. You have Bob, which is an L2, is attempting to use BitVM as kind of their underlying infrastructure. And this seems to me this is where the future of this interoperability space is going, is essentially figuring out how to rig the signature scheme to power whatever you're trying to do in a specific use case.
Yeah, totally. I'm just looking at the lit protocol right now. Lit's key management. Interesting. I'll have to take a closer look at it. Yeah, I mean that has to be the case, right? There has to be some agent, not in the sense of AI agent, but potentially could be in the future, but some agent with the right economic incentives to observe different transactions that are happening across different chains, and have the incentive to basically say, yes, these are as the user intended, and be penalized if they act incorrectly. And that's kind of what all these different solutions are doing, whether it's whether it's like, I guess you don't think of it as interop per se, but Thorchain.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our team previously worked on Thorchain core, and it's the same thing, right? Each Thorchain node runs a full node of the chains that they're integrated with, and they observe transactions that come across chain, and they have to behave appropriately. And if they don't, they get slashed, or if they're just not doing it at all, they get churned. So that sort of process is good. I think, again, with solvers, the thing I like about solvers, and you look at something like Wormhole or dBridge, is as a founding team, it's really nice because you can integrate lots of chains without having liquidity. I mean, that also makes Thorchain's moat like pretty insanely huge, because they have such big liquidity pools. And that's why if you want to, if you're North Korea and you want to swap a lot of Ethereum, hack Ethereum for Bitcoin, you basically use Thorchain, right? And there's no other way. Like, it's getting harder to do it on a centralized exchange with no KYC or fake KYC. So, I mean, that's not a vote for a crime, but it's basically saying, like, it's a highly valuable protocol to be able to do this literally on chain in size. But solvers networks are sort of tackling that, where you basically have some agent on the destination chain that they themselves are trusting the message that's coming from the source chain, putting up the capital to quickly fulfill that transaction, and then trusting that the capital is going to come later. So they themselves are incentivized to sort of operate honestly as well within the solvers network. So I think those are the two main things. But you're right, like there all is some sort of cryptographic signing scheme, and it's hard to keep track of all the latest L2s, but there's Frost, there's Roast, there's a lot of new ones coming out. So it'll be interesting to see where it evolves. But yeah, I'd love to chat more and like learn more about Lit, because this looks pretty cool.
Yeah. Happy to help you. Also, Shannon is our founder, who's in the crowd as well. Is pretty much an expert in Lit protocol now, kind of at this point. They've been a good help for us. We also, we ran into pretty much the same challenge, which it sounds like you did recently, is exploring what's the best way to basically create a non-custodial system, right, for whatever you're doing, but also, increase programmability in a way. And all of these different interoperability protocols, whether you're a bridge or a wrapped asset protocol or an L2, right, or a vaulting scheme like us, everyone has kind of a little bit of a different need, right, or requirement for whatever you're doing. Like for Emblem, right, the main use case is it's not just this, but the main use case is taking NFTs from one chain to another, right, where yours is taking runes, right, across these different ecosystems, and then create a better trading experience, where something like something like Bob is trying to just import as much Bitcoin liquidity as possible in a non-custodial way. So everything has this little bit of a different tweak, which just this small tweak ends up with a different requirement of using a different kind of underlying TSS system, kind of just paraphrasing it in that way. So it's really cool to have this conversation, because it sounds like you guys have definitely put your research into choosing Near for what you guys need.
Yeah, man, we're pretty stoked to be building, and it's exciting to see everyone trying to tackle this from different angles, because it's motivating, and I think we're all going to get there in different ways. And it's an open field. It's a blue ocean, for lack of a better term, I think. And like I said, it's fun to be building on Bitcoin. It's fun to be working on the chain that sort of brought us all here. So stoked to share this all with you guys, and I appreciate everyone having us on. And definitely always happy to answer more questions that you guys have. Feel free to slide into our DMs or or just hit us up on Telegram. We're a pretty friendly bunch.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Adam, did you understand everything through that whole conversation?
No, I'm a smooth brain, bro. But I get the idea, and I think part of what we're all doing here, us too, right? It's like we're building this stuff and hoping people find use cases for it, right? I mean, there's simple stuff. Okay, we're going to bring runes over and stuff like that. But really, it's almost like we feel like in the same way that we had success with NFTs in 21, people bringing over rare pepes and stuff. It's like we're waiting for, creatives to do creative stuff with this. In some ways, we're kind of building the infrastructure and just waiting for creatives to do interesting stuff with it. I feel like in some ways, there's the DeFi and yes, there's this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, we need creative people to do stuff that gets the end user excited. I think that's what we're all kind of hoping for.
Yeah, it's like as Mind Labs spoke earlier, it's not the situation of build it and they will come. Crypto is not like that at all, right? You have to build it and incentivize them on top of it, and then they will come. And figuring out, right? Adam and I were on a call with a different team before this talking about, okay, if Emblem deploys on there, then what's the incentive scheme? And we both had one kind of out of the box. And when you start talking with teams who, firmly understand that you can't just build something and deploy it, and that there has to be some sort of incentive there, whether it's a social incentive or a monetary incentive or a political incentive, honestly, those are the teams that really separate themselves from, basically the winners and the losers. So, Adam, did you see if there were any questions in the replies? I don't know if I saw any questions.
There was one, and it was just, will key holders be able to set up nodes? Will they have an advantage in any node sales? I think was a general question somebody had there.
Yeah, good question. And it's funny. I know the concept of a node sale is pretty tired and overplayed at this point.
I still like the node sale. I like the node sale.
Well, I mean, I do too. I think it just comes down to execution, right? Like ICOs have been a thing for 7 or 8 years, and they're still a thing. You just have to. There's a lot of factors that go into doing it properly and sustainably. So, our vision was like the keys. We want to make them as useful as possible, and so we're always trying to find ways to add like some really interesting, fun types of utility, and obviously like economic rewards for the key holders as well. The nodes. So like we've just done some napkin math. I just want to like share numbers because I'm sure somebody's going to quote me and get angry in the future. But the value of nodes for a potential Bitcoin bridge, like if again it's an asymmetric bet. If you want to, if someone wants to get in early for a bridge that could potentially do like, billions of volume a month in the future, and that's not really hyperbole either. I think we all realize that if this market that we're in goes to 100 trillion over the next 10 years, then that's actually a kind of a small number. So the potential of owning nodes. I don't know if anyone actually has set up nodes or master nodes for different protocols, but they're quite lucrative, and one that signs and observes Bitcoin transactions to other high volume chains could be equally lucrative. And so the keys, there's a lot of, I guess, everyone from fish to whales that participated in the keys sale, and so $150 or $175, which were the prices of the keys, to some people is it's a drop in the bucket, and so to some people it's a lot of money. And so I think we want to say, hey, look, like, we're not expecting everyone to have the infrastructure to eventually manage a node, but yeah, the idea with the mine nodes and what will enable the mine nodes, which is a node key, is essentially that what we're going to be selling in a node sale in the future is that if you have keys now, and we're gonna set a cutoff date, is you'll basically get a substantial discount on what the future cost is of minting or converting the current keys, like the current ordinals that we just minted last night. You'll get a substantial discount on getting the node keys, which will enable you to manage your own node or have a node run by the RunMine team. So yes, there is going to be a pretty big discount. We'll share more about that in next week. I think my growth team has been like, I don't think they left their apartment for the last 3 weeks getting ready for the ordinals mint. and generally just like the state of the market. There's actually the team member who, I don't know if he's listening now, but if you're listening to this replay, I'll go ahead and share at your expense. But he was supposed to be on the call, but he just messaged me a couple hours ago because he's British. He said, "Mate, I can't do it. I'm tapped out." So, anyway, but yeah, like there's we had this big mint last night for the rune skis. For those who are listening and don't know, it's an ordinal. It's kind of like a spinning animated GIF or GIF, and similar to runestone, similar vibe, sort of like rustic, runic, old vibe. And it's been integral to a lot of the things we've done in the protocol, but we want to make sure that it continues to be integrated to the stuff we're doing in the future. And part of that, as I said, is we're evolving the bridge architecture to having, it'll probably be a phased rollout, but let's say roughly 80 to 100 nodes, validating nodes to start with, and then maybe 150 to 200 over a period of like 4 to 5 years will be the peak, maybe 250. And those nodes get paid for doing a particular job, and that job is honestly signing and validating transactions that they're observing cross chain. And so that can be, running those nodes for different networks that we've mentioned can be very profitable business model. And so we want to sort of lay that out for people that don't quite understand how those nodes work and what might be involved, without obviously like promising any sort of actual numbers, but kind of giving a sense of what's possible. And then say, hey, look, like if you own a rune ski, yeah, you can get a substantial discount on that process of converting the existing keys to the future node keys.
Well, if there weren't any other similarities that we've discussed this whole time, Emblem Vault is actually launching a runes called Emblem Vault Keys that we etched on the first day that runes launched, and have actually a similar trajectory in terms of this like decentralization through this like node scheme over a longer term time period. So actually kind of interesting to hear very similar parallels for different objectives, but that seems to be the inevitability for the majority of these interoperability protocols. Is I think we've all been so tormented by the $6 billion in hacks from the last cycle in terms of bridges that now every single interoperability protocol long-term roadmap is now just max decentralization. So that can never happen again.
Yeah, true. And I think again, it's I'm sure you guys feel the same. It's a balance between decentralization and not, right. And on one hand, decentralization, you don't want to ever get into a situation where there's like sort of governance theater, and also there can be many protocols, and I think we saw this last cycle, as they rushed to decentralization. I mean, there is a graveyard, I probably in several old wallets that I have, of just like tokens that honestly were some of the projects were, the execution was insane, right? Like beautiful designs, crazy protocol idea, like different, like crazy yield, really beautiful UI, user experience. And then like, some come to mind, and they just made some governance decision where they were trying to be too decentralized too soon and lost hundreds of millions of dollars. And then, I mean, it's over, right? It's not like Web 2 where it's like move fast and break things. You break something like that, it's over. So, and there's many protocols that have been in the same boat where they're trying to push out some sort of governance too fast, and maybe not necessarily a governance attack, but some equivalent, or it's just not really worth it. And so that's kind of been our MO. It sounds like yours as well, where like, you first validate product market fit, and then you slowly decentralize over time, I think is the way to go. But yeah, good luck with the Emblem Vault keys. That's hilarious that we're basically on the same track, but not surprising. But really happy. I mean, we just did the mint last night, like this time in the middle of the night. So Adam and co, like really happy to share with you guys what went well and some of our learnings from that experience. If you want to chat afterwards.
Yeah, please. Yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch. Yeah, I completely agree. That's similar to Emblem, just on a longer term time horizon, right? Mainnet in 2020 found product market fit, 2021 product market fit again multiple times, and then decided, as we upgrade this protocol, how do we decentralize it? We're actually moving into this Emblem 2.0 era starting in 2 weeks or so, which then we decentralize basically the key management infrastructure to make it non-custodial, right? And then the next level of decentralization you think is oh, the verification and validation of a vault creation in kind of our sense, right? And then after that, you think of, oh, what's the next term there? But which would probably be some sort of open sourcing of the entire thing. But you can't do that all at one time because, yeah, I've seen that same mess happen many, many times where once you decentralize it too much, it becomes very tough to make any changes. I think this is actually something that Ethereum's going through right now, is having too much decentralization, which is causing delays in terms of major infrastructure changes.
It's a good point. Ethereum is probably the example. It's like sitting right under my nose. But I was thinking, yeah, the first thing, that's a great example of just like like Solana versus Ethereum. One said, hey, look, like here's what users want. They want DeFi summer, but instant transactions for like a fraction of a penny, not 2 minutes and hundreds of dollars per transaction. They just want to have fun on chain, and they've done a really good job with a more centralized model. But I mean, there's also that, and then the one that came to mind that I always laugh about with some friends is I don't know if anybody was in. It's a stablecoin protocol called Bean.money or Bean Money, and Bean. They had a situation where basically someone, this is not the first instance of this happening, but someone basically put forth a malicious proposal, a governance proposal to send some small amount of treasury to support Ukraine in that war that had just started like in like Q1, Q2, 2022, and then like snuck in some malicious code. Yeah. And then that code caused the protocol to be drained for like $150 million. So like because Bean was so good, like they were GigaBrain team. I don't know who it was, but they decided to put governance fully on chain, and cause people to lose probably like their life savings. So yeah, like I think we all agree what users really want is the end user experience, and the fact that generally we're working on blockchain is probably good enough. And as long as they're secure. So yeah, we've been, I think it's kind of a meme sometimes in crypto, like, oh, I got the Surtech audit. What's like the meme of the guy that like is at the soccer stadium where he's like waving, he's like checking people for whatever, and he's just not really checking them at all. But I think we we're self-funded. Crypto is it's not cheap to be a builder in crypto, as you guys know, and you have paid devs and marketing, and it's like it's to run a big team. It's a lot of money, and audits are expensive. But you only get one shot. So if your bridge is one that's hacked, there's really no coming back from it. People don't trust it anymore. So yeah, it's game over. So you might as well move slow. And if you can't figure out how to move fast but also slow enough, then it's going to be an uphill battle. But so yeah, we're big on security, and like you said, we'll start with the more centralized solution, and then slowly go through a phase decentralization.
Yeah, I guess the only comeback is if you're Wormhole and you're backed by Jump Crypto, where they could just basically pay the user $600 million.
Right. That was like that. I think if everyone thinks back to reading the news that like what was the Kanav or whatever just tweets like, yeah, we're just gonna backstop it. Moving on. It was like, oh, I guess they just have $300 million like to throw at this sitting around. But I think he probably knew. He woke up and he's like, we have no choice. Either we pay this or the project is done. And so they paid it. But yeah, that's crazy example.
Well, dude, I really enjoyed this conversation. It's cool to have builders, in your space that you can actually have conversations with. It's unfortunate at times that many protocols who are in the same kind of market tend to become territorial, right, or aggressive to one another. But we try to keep this open, collaborative, competitive environment, because for us, it's more about, hey, if we work together to grow the pie, right? As we talked about, this is probably $1 trillion industry over the long-term horizon. There's no point of trying to divide it and, cause a lot of animosity, and just kind of work together to figure out what the better solutions are. So I really enjoyed the conversation. It's cool to see you guys are on a very similar projection and track as we are.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys having us on. I know we're sort of like newer kids on the block, so it means a lot that you invite us on and like let us kind of just chat things out and share our story. I think, I'm sure you guys can relate, having been in the space for a long time, but this is my third cycle, and some of the biggest regrets aren't always, this might sound corny, but like, not always, of course, I regret the coins that I sold too early that ended up, 10,000 Xing, but the relationships that sometimes you do get in those situations as a builder, or just, someone who's you're kind of working with, and there's friction for whatever reason, and you just don't maintain the relationship. And you look back and, you fast forward like 7-8 years in the future, maybe another cycle, maybe another 2 cycles, 12, 16 years. And you both run a fund, or you both run huge protocols, or, you've moved on and you're super successful. And man, what if you just maintain that network a little bit and looked past the fact that at one point, yeah, you might've been competing on some front. Those are the biggest regrets. So I think that's the case with friends, with colleagues, with other protocols that you're sort of in the same space. It's like you said, the pie. We're fortunate to be working in Bitcoin, where the pie is essentially infinite for all intents and purposes, essentially infinite. So we might as well work together to grow it. So yeah, thanks for having us on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, it's going to be fun. We'll stay in touch and continue to build together. And yeah, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll do the same over time, because there's definitely going to be a lot more hurdles in the interoperability space as we continue to grow. And everyone who sat here for the conversation, really appreciate it. Make sure that you give RuneMine a follow so you can stay up to date about how they're going to change the Rune space. And then also give Emblem Vault a follow as well, as you want to see us as we progress into this Emblem 2.0 era. We have a lot of fun stuff, including an AI product, so entering the AI interoperability space. I guess you can call it that. So cool product there. We also host a show Tuesday through Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. We're not having a show tomorrow. It's Thanksgiving here in the United States, but we will be back next Tuesday. We have a full slated of shows over the next few weeks. We actually have the Lit Protocol founder coming on the 4th, so next Wednesday. So that'll be a good one. You actually hear about how we're powering Emblem 2.0. So that'll be an awesome kind of conversation there. Everyone, if you're in the United States, have a good Thanksgiving, good holiday weekend. If you're not, please still have a awesome weekend, as most Americans are probably going to be taking a 4-day weekend. And we'll be back here Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys. Happy holidays. Good week. Have a good weekend.